Before we get started, we're going to have to go with Mike's intro before we do a single thing. So, Mike, take it away.
Okay, all right. This is not one of my best ones. I was very emotionally and creatively drained after last week, so this is not one of my best ones. This is keep it dialed in to level 100 WMUM, your source for everything Mume. There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, so we are
Not one of my best. That's like a second tier. That's like a lower shelf.
That was pretty good. No, that was pretty good.
So I put a lot of effort into these, man. It's very draining.
The one in the previous week, though, was quite special. I'm not going to lie. But anyway, thank everyone for tuning in to Mume Talk 4. Today, we've got a special guest. We've got Shaukr with us. And Shaukr, you want to... We'll go off with introductions, and we'll lead off with Shaukr, which I assume most people don't need a big introduction. You're going to introduce yourself, but real quick, some points. Very well-known, respected player on the dark side for the most part, although you do dabble in the puke races. Level 100 orc, and very heavily active in the PK scene. All right, take it away, John.
I feel a little bit fluffed by that, but thanks, Peter. So actually, one of the things I thought was kind of interesting is when I started using voice at all, people started asking, "How do you pronounce your character's name?" I don't know. I made this in 2003. Why are you asking me this question?
That problem on all my characters. Yeah.
But sure, let's just go with that. So it seems like you sort of filled it in, but sure, let's do some basics. I've been playing on and off, mostly off, since 2003. I played far too much orc. Please don't try and grind to 100. It's not worth it. Nowadays, I just kind of log in to hang out with people. I PK, I smob. Honestly, probably more smobbing than anything, just because of the player numbers. But I feel like I've been around the game for a little bit, even though there are people frothing to tell me that I am a knob, I am a scrub, I am inserted noun here. But we'll get to those.
Well, that's fair. I don't think anyone on this podcast has the pro moniker. We're all scrubs in here. So
yeah. But were you Shaukr? Is Shaukr the first level 100 shaman?
It depends how you define shamans, because I mean, strictly speaking, I mean, Azazello, Smart Love both have caster elements to them. I would say I'm the first purish shaman, but
yeah, I think I think
yeah,
in terms of like someone who just drops harms in slag, I think probably the first 100 shaman. I think it counts. I think in the we have an official scorekeeper on the podcast, and we're getting a ruling, and yes, confirmed. So
it's only because Meliza, who is substantially better of a player, to stop playing that character. What's that, like 90?
Yeah, I mean that was like level 93 or something.
Meliza was.
And back in the
day, I made the character because I saw players like Meliza and Diamonium just crushing people. I'm like, I want to cast the harm. I want to make the elf die too. And
Meliza,
here
the
we
Goblin
are, 20
Queen,
years later.
level 96, incredible, amazing. That was back before the level changes. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Whole different era.
Whole different world. But all right, so we'll move on to next one. So we got Nick in here, also a fellow level 100. So we have two level 100s in this 4-person chat, which is pretty intimidating. But most famous for playing Dent, also one of the best super mob leaders in the game, I would say. You have a bunch of just intricate, deep knowledge of things on like a PvE perspective. And yeah, take it away, Nick.
Well, most of that knowledge is purloined from Elistair and Lewis, so there you go. But thank you very much. Yes, I play Dent, Marmoril, Narrowan, and others. So yeah.
And I'm interested to see how this goes later, because we got two level 100 voices in the chat, and both of them have very different views on terms of how they play the game, which will be really interesting. But then we got Mike. Mike plays a bunch. I don't know what you would consider your most famous character. I
don't know. They're all just like abandoned combos. I play Taryn. I play Marilder.
You're that fucking Marilder. All right, now we know.
That fucking Marilder. That is his title.
I play Malev being on that. I've been playing him a lot recently. He's really fun.
Wait, is it Malev? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
Wait, how would you? I don't know. See, here it is. Here's the name thing. I don't know. How would you pronounce it?
I have been convinced this whole time it was Malev.
Okay, Malev is better. Actually, you know what? I like Malev better. Yeah. There you go.
But no, Mike is also a combo enthusiast like myself. If you're looking for some shitty, miserable statted character, just ask one of us.
If you're looking for a character where you're convinced it will get good at like level 40, definitely talk to us.
Yeah.
But you'll never actually get to level 40.
You'll be convinced the whole time, though. You're like, man, just like 3 more levels.
That's my specialty. Yeah.
But
if
also,
we have time later, we need to talk, and not to cut you off, but we need to talk what is the dumbest combo or whatever other character you have made and tried to play, because I have some stories there that I think will be fun.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that should be a recurring spot.
That could be its own like whole talk, combo talk. That could be a whole special thing. And then, obviously, Mike also is heavily involved in mapping most of the eastern portions of the game, I would say, because you were you did pretty much all of DG and I think all of Emin, and were those?
Yeah, I mapped the shit out of it. I've actually redone a lot of maps. There's a lot of errors in the common maps. Like Gloom has issues. I've redone a lot of those.
No,
but
don't let people know.
Yeah, like quite a lot. There's really a lot. There's a lot of shit you can clean up.
All the secrets being released here.
Yeah, but actually, you know what? I want to do a new. I want to do a new segment really fast, and then we can dive in on our honorable guest. But one second, the new segment is the Mume community update. Okay, you ready for this?
Well, hold on one second.
Right.
Hold on one second. I think we're lagging a little bit on stream. Let me see what's going on there. I think. Can you guys see? Does it look lagged out to you?
Hold on. I need to actually. I should load the Twitch actually.
I just want to make sure that we're not missing out on some premium.
Oh, you look
talk here.
good, dude. You're bringing in the cam today. You're looking good.
Well, I mean, assuming it's rolling. Is it rolling?
It is. Okay, type something in, Peter. Type in like
Right,
examine self or something.
Examine self. Oh, I'm lagging on
Caress self something.
Caress self.
Okay, there it goes.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Okay, it's not that bad, dude.
Okay,
it's not that bad.
As long as it's working. Awesome.
Yeah,
okay, yeah. So, what were we saying, Mike?
Okay, it's time for the Mume community update. If you check in on Discord, you'll see that the Mume community is currently engaged in a civil, democratic, and above all, healthy debate. Any day now, we expect the outcome of this debate to result in widespread agreement. Everyone will get along soon. Okay,
Definitely. Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was thinking last night too. When I was reading the Discord, I was like, man, I just want to show all the newbies this, because that will be.
Yeah, this is completely out of control. It's completely insane. It's like a undergraduate philosophy class gone really, really bad.
Mm-hmm. I love the fact that everyone's passionate, but sometimes things can get a little spicy in there.
Yeah. It's like okay. I keep thinking of extremely inappropriate bad jokes. Okay, I'll stop this. Okay, let's stop. That was the new community update. Let's move on. We have a guest.
Well, actually, in kind of going along with that, we do want to do a kind of game update real quick before we get into things. So quick heads up in terms of the war. We've got Andrew still on top for the Armies of the West and Zud still on top for the Forces of the Dark Lord. So congrats to both of you. And at the same time, everyone else, go kill these motherfuckers. Like, what the hell? This is 2 weeks in a row? Unacceptable.
Stop running from me, Zud. I will catch you.
Yeah.
Andrew actually told. Well, the player of Andrew actually told me. He said he's not in COG. So player Andrew said to tell you, Peter, that it's I guess other Nick Una.
The other Nick. Okay.
It's not Snacker.
I'm glad. Okay, so we got that. So again, congrats, Nick, and someone's coming for your ass now, just so you know. But in terms of newbie status, we've had a whole bunch of newbies logging into the game recently, which is fantastic. And special shout out to, I think, player HUD and Dayrandir. I'm sure there's others as well, but those two I know were taking like a very concerted effort to help out the newbies. Saw them leading them around a lot. So big shout out to those guys. That was awesome of you guys. But yeah, other than that, let's hop into some of the topics that we wanted to get into today. So right off the bat, we're gonna address you, Shaukr, real quick.
Hi.
Yeah, exactly. So, from your perspective, most of the development of the game recently has been very much on the western side, and well, actually, aside from BN, so that's a different story. But a lot of zones have been coming out or we're working on new stuff basically to help newbies along and puke races, and that's all great. That's fantastic. We super need to help out the newbies, but from a dark side player's perspective, what are some of the things that you have kind of noticed that you would like to be addressed at some point? You know, what are some of the things that you really like about the dark side, and what do you think some of the things that we could do to like help boost it up a bit?
That is a really, really big question. And
Yes, it
honestly,
is.
it takes more time than we have. The first thing I would start with is to point out there have been a few pretty material adjustments to Darkseid. They're not kind of as constant an update stream as what you're talking about with regards to the West, but we shouldn't rule out the fact that the adjustments to Dol Guldur, the expansion of shops, you guys have talked about this in prior episodes, but also the increases that update provided with regards to shamans and the tools they have available are pretty substantial. And I think it was nice to see so much of a sort of class-based material change to the point that pure shamans actually became something that mattered and weren't just a smob toolkit. That should at least be recognized, because changes like that to make classes viable, every time it happens, it's one day closer to Thieves being playable. We do have to recognize it.
There was a huge burst of shamans after that too. I made a shaman as well.
Yeah, 100%. 100% agree. That was a beautifully executed change. The whole DG program, just everything. The map, the smobs, especially as you say, the classes and the skill development. Really, really well done. Totally agree.
Absolutely.
But so to talk about what darkies might need or might be interested in, of course, only from my perspective, is let's even step back. What does it mean to be playing a darkie? The bulk of the time,
we're getting philosophical here. I like it.
You'd
Okay.
expect this to be, the white side tends to be somewhat more numerous, somewhat less experienced, more powerful characters on paper, but not particularly optimized. And the dark side is often smaller numbers, but more experienced, more aggressive, more focused on that PvPvE kind of let's hunt down people, let's create asymmetric engagements, let's be the threat that Mume's world and Arda, Lord of the Rings world, was meant to really be to have and to be represented by the dark side. And then from that perspective, what's kind of interesting is a lot of the changes to white side potentially benefit darks insofar as there's something to do on dark side. If I log on Orc, I'm going to want to, sure, I'm going to be XPing, but that's because I have a lot of downtime. I'm going to want to look for players. I don't want to look for targets to attack, and so on and so forth. The more newbies, the more XP groups, the more people just want to get in and get out in the world. That's all beneficial in an indirect way, and it's beneficial to sort of the ethos of playing Darkside, which isn't really, hey, let's get the most powerful gear, let's grind up and do nothing. Often that's what you have to do anyways. But ultimately, it's all for the goal of, hey, let's go chase an elf.
Right.
So there are benefits that I want to say that, and where I go from that is talking about what do I want to see on Darkside. That kind of playstyle needs probably some more empowerment and help. I don't want to go right this second, as we just started, into my 100 balance complaints about why it's not always rewarding to chase some pukes that turns out to be 10 times stronger than you and will 1v3 your group. But at the same time, it's really rough for most of the hours of the day to log on, be one of two darkies, and there to be nothing to chase. And when you do find something, it's someone with 20 years of constant experience playing the most optimized character you've ever seen, with 2 huge stone giants, 14 scrolls, 3 rocks, and a store port.
Absolutely. That brings up a lot of good points. Before we get into some of the more specifics, though, let's go with some, we learned this from earlier podcasts, let's go with some positives real quick. So, since you're a pretty heavy PKer, what have been some of your favorite battles that you've participated in? And, who are some of the people involved?
Oh, I have to think back over 20 years for some stories.
Exactly. I mean, you got plenty of time. You don't have to answer that right now if you don't want.
Would you want to know the saddest thing?
What?
Which is, and I guess this is sort of broadening the conversation once again, but if today you want to log on for PK and you want to have a good fight and you want to have a good story to tell, you should play White Side, not Darky.
Why'd you say that?
Because if you log on Dark, chances are 99% of the players you run into, they will run at first sight because they're out there for XP, and that's their prerogative. They want XP, they can do that. But the result is you're chasing people with functionally infinite mobility. Or you encounter solo players who are going to abuse every trick in the book on White Side, and often it's not even that enjoyable to engage against them because I don't think Mume's really that well built for those sort of one-on-one engagements compared to the team clashes, the war, and so on.
Oh, I completely
Whereas
agree.
if I log on an elf, I don't know why I would play a man, not an elf. But if I were to,
Okay,
chances are I run into
I love the race. I love race talk. I've been thinking we should do an episode where it's like, which is the best race?
Yeah.
So keep going.
possibly
It's like,
three people in this podcast stole my string of 40 elven ears, and I'm still mad about it. But if I logged onto that white side, chances are, if I run into players of the other side, I run into a group. It's Zud, it's Croax, it's whoever else happens to be on dark side. They're going to want to fight me, and I can throw down with a bunch of players, have a battle that isn't just who ordered the Charmies a little bit better, and I'm going to remember that. It's going to be an engagement. It's going to be an actual experience. So if you were to ask me about my most interesting battles from probably the past year, almost all of them are going to come from white side, because almost all of the actual committed, interesting engagements are going to come from that direction. If you ask me about dark side experiences, the last night before I got 100, Sindane and I charged 2v5 against Hap, Iolo, and a bunch of other XPers in White Captain, and they all just left. They just walked away. They didn't even fight back. And then I went and just XP'd until I got the level and killed Lore Master for 100 despite Diamonium and went to sleep.
And
that's kind of the story of a lot of the last several years.
I think part of that actually, to hop in here, is that we've kind of trained the game trains mostly pukes to not want to fight. So you've got people who generally don't enjoy it that much. Like, so for instance, like Nick, you just prefer interacting with the PvE side of the game, which is great. But in general, you are trained not to fight, because most of the time your first experience with an evil race is somewhere around level like maybe 10, somewhere between 10 and 20, right? You're going out into the world, you're trying to experience something new, and you run into an orc, you run into a BN, and you get destroyed. Why do you get destroyed? Just because there's no way level 10 to 20 is going to beat a legend anything on the dark side, especially a more experienced one. So you immediately get destroyed. So immediately you're taught, okay, anytime I see an enemy player, run, because I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose. And that feeling sticks with you even once you get much more, once you get higher level and more comfortable with the game. It takes a long time to break that habit of, oh shit, there's an enemy here, I gotta run, because you're just so used to always being dumpstered by them. What do you think
you're
about that,
right.
Mike?
And go ahead, Mike, throw your review.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
No, I think it's not a controversial point that the risk reward balance is off for people with the risk reward balance of engaging in PK is off for people who have like the smob mindset, because almost everybody, all the like career, quote unquote breed legend career smob type folks, like they're all very interested in kind of PK, or most I would say, and they don't, like, if you can get an overkill, they'll sure as hell hop in a portal on an overkill, right? I think just to them, it's like, they get burned a few times, they lose all their shit a few times, and they just say, okay, the risk outweighs the reward, even trying to learn, and then they just opt. So there's like this kind of polarization. There's this skew, like the current kind of balance mechanics of the game push 20% of the population towards hardcore PK lifestyle, and everybody else is like, I'm comfortable with just the dopamine hit of just steady advancement and min-maxing, and I'm just going to go in that direction. So there's sort of this fork that diverges, I guess. That's what it seems to me.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I talk about a lot with people that I talk about the game with, is what is Mume? And plenty of people in various channels are going to tell you very loudly that Mume is PvP or PvE, and of course the obvious answer is neither. It's PvPvE. It's one of many games in this genre, and every time one of these games exists, which is pretty much constantly, the same argument will happen. The same argument we're having here, and by here I mean within the Mume community, is there are people who say, I want private PvE servers. There's people who say, we need PvP to be central. Everyone must be forced to engage in it. There's always people trying to say everyone should play the way I want, and I'm almost offended by the idea that there are other playstyles that interact with mine, which is kind of
Yeah.
odd because
Yeah, it's
you
like it
picked the
becomes this
game
like
that's structured this way.
fierce dogmatic debate.
Mhm.
It's like no, becomes some
from the
extreme.
beginning.
It's yeah.
And to me, it was odd that you, and it's not wrong, but odd that you said this, like when you pointed out that a lot of players don't want to take the risk of PvP, whereas to me, to PvE without the ability to fight back is taking the risk. Learning to PvP is diminishing that risk to be able to do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
To give you an example, I mentioned that one time I charged Haptors, for example, and the planning strategy basically went like, look, there's no physical way we win this, but chances are they're not going to fight back, so it's fine. We're literally praying for the fact that nobody will try and hit us. Compare that to sometimes I've charged Balrog groups. Some of you are probably in those. There is nothing more terrifying when 7 Bree-Legend dwarves realize that they have the A key on their keyboard and just start assisting and you lose 400 health in the fight. All you have to do is hit back and the risk is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Not in all scenarios, because not all PvP is the same. But again, going back to what I said, the risk is minimized if you're willing to see the fight coming and just have a plan. So where I want to take that and kind of solicit your feedback and thoughts is, where do you go as a totally new player to get to the level of confidence where you're willing to do that? And I've got my own thoughts, but I want to hear yours first. I'm not even talking about going from, straight out of the Black Hills to First Warlord or solo PKing. I'm talking about orcs have hit us good.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? Yeah.
Exactly. Nick, you want to jump in?
Well, to that question, one of the things I think is very fascinating, I see on other mods is they'll have so-called PK arenas. So that would be an interesting mechanism to actually train newbies. So typically in a PK arena, you don't, whoever loses, like you don't lose anything. You might gain something. So it's really something that you can sit there and teach skills, kind of like how me and a friend of mine, we'd go sit somewhere around Grey Havens and we'd run around the forest zone or indoors or whatever and try to whack each other, and the first one to bad loses, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of train for that way. Might be an interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm. So actually, it's interesting you bring that up. I'm not fully behind an idea like that. The main reason is I love the war aspect. Like, I love the fact that when you do meet an enemy, it's just kill them, period, end of story. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And so having an arena situation like that kind of takes you out of it. That being said, a dueling system where like you could duel someone on your own side, and whoever wins the fight, like let's say the fight's to bad or whatever, but there's like a dueling room or a couple rooms you go to, and then like whoever wins and gets the other person to bad first, like gets 100 gold or something like that. You could wager on it. Like, that'd be kind of cool. But
that's what I'm saying actually is on your own side. Like, say you have a place in Nock where you go in and you can challenge someone else, and you both enter the zone, and then the first one to bad, you both get pulled out, and here's a couple gold or something. I don't know.
That would be kind of cool. But yeah, kind of getting to John's point here. Right now, so I've had a bunch of people actually approach me over the last 2 or 3 weeks who are interested in PKing, but they have no ability to get started. You can look at logs, and logs are fine. They're great, but the best way to get PK experience is to PK with people who know how to PK. And you are very, very actively de-incentivized to bring those people along with you. Because if you do, you're probably going to die. And they're going to die, and then you're going to feel bad. And, there's no reason to bring people along other than just altruism, like, I like this guy, let's do it, And that, the fact that the system is that way is a problem,
Yeah, I think if I understand John's point, with which I agree, is that getting the basics, like getting the basic survivability in PK situations, massively increases the overall amount of fun and enjoyment you're going to have from you. 100% agree. But the dilemma is just even acquiring that knowledge, acquiring that survivability is, I think, a random, chaotic, uncertain task in the game. it's very like if you say, it's Saturday afternoon, I'm gonna start learning how to PK on Mume. It's just not a very tractable thing, right? You're gonna spend hours looking. If you join a group and you fuck up and your group gets killed, they're gonna rage out, which is a horrible feeling, which I've certainly had in my career, right? Like it's just that transition from zero skill to basic survivable, to that basic competency is a very uncertain, unnavigable transition. I think for a lot of people, certainly it was for. I mean, I'm probably still going through that transition, but like a lot of people are, I think, just don't know how to get to that level. And like I mean, everyone's been in the situation where you try to PK and you fuck up and your group dies and you just feel terrible about it. You're like, well, I'm not going to do that anymore, right? So, I agree. I think I definitely agree with the point that if the game could somehow facilitate a more tractable, a more navigable path towards learning some of the PK things, because it is actually a very different style of combat than a lot of just banging on mobs. I think that would have more fun for a lot of players and be much better for the game at all. But I actually think the game's skewing in the opposite direction. I think over the past 10 years, PK has become more inaccessible, more uncertain, more asymmetric, right? Like you were saying, John, you find a random elf and it's a 20-year veteran with 14 scrolls. Like it's just actually heading more and more in that kind of like crazy skewed direction, I think.
Well, there's also just so much to keep track of. So I posted a video, I think yesterday, and it was just like a brief little clip, basically, of it was Mike and I. We were PKing, and there was some good folks there involved. Kilter was involved, and Zud and other people. It was a good time. But just in that small clip, the chaos, like I don't expect anyone except for seasoned pros to understand what was actually happening in that little tiny, because there's just so much spam. There's so much like, okay, what is the planning that goes behind it? Like it's the PK system in Mume is extremely complicated. Like if you look at other PvP games, I would say that Mume is far more complicated than like let's say even like League of Legends, like that kind of a game, like the amount of stuff you just have to know to be able to win a fight in Mume is staggering.
Yeah. But so John, our guest, what would, if you're gonna Mr. Miyagi it here, right? Like if you're the sensei and you have a dutiful young student who wants to learn.
You blew up one of my students in that fight. I watched it go down from the sky. I was on my god, deleted Arzo. You know how long it took me to re-equip him? Actually, no time at all.
There you go. See, there you go. That's exactly it.
Did he get his own step from his corpse?
I do actually have some thoughts I wanted to bring up. On this exact.
Thing. How would you? What's the path? So,
even before that, I have played some of those other MUDs that have like a dueling system where it's, you can choose to duel not to the death, so death doesn't actually kill you and gives you a chance to practice. It's really helpful. Mume doesn't have this option, and I think to some degree we've romanticized the idea. The only way to learn is through violence and doing, but it's not the 90s. There's a lot of other games out there, and they all do a lot more to onboard players. So there's only so much we can... Obviously, you don't want to just make Mume every other game, but we have to consider the fact that this is the world we're in, and this is what gaming is. I have also done the sort of, fight till bad, and this is where I learned in my early new times of the game that you can, in fact, die from wounded to a smite, and may, in fact, never go bad at all. The first time I was same-sided, completely by accident. Now, but if I had to talk to a player who was totally new and was running into the problems that all of you have mentioned, we all know that all you see in a fight is a bunch of red and then you're dead. You don't know how to parse all the text coming down, which is honestly kind of a feature in itself, that battles are confusing and you can't coordinate every move necessarily. The first step I've had this conversation with people before is you need to know and you need to come up with a heuristic, some protocol in a battle. And I'm not talking having a plan. I'm going below that. I'm talking, what your hit key is, what your flee key is. If a fight happens, what do? If all of a sudden your group leader says fight in group chat, what is your kind of lizard brain reaction? And getting that in place is the first and most important step, because a lot of players don't, and their first reaction is just to run around, to not be hitting, letting weapon delay, not be spent hitting things. To give you an example, just after I came back, I stopped playing from 2005 through 2018. So a little bit of a gap. I came back, didn't really know what I was doing. Still had some of my characters, so I had unretired Shaukr, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And Arkadij, however you pronounce his name, bring him on though. Also, incredible player.
Absolutely.
Grouped me and was just dragging me around faster than I could consider anything. He's obviously better than I am now, and I certainly didn't even know how to play then. When we were fighting two Zogres, I don't remember who it was. Maybe Ridar and Hezel in Undeads.
Oh,
and
so
we
two
charge in
noobs.
and just start. Yeah, two incredibly inexperienced, amazing players. And of course, they were targeting me, and I didn't know what was going on. And I just asked him, like, look, in a fight like this, what am I even supposed to be doing? And I told him, like, here's the spells I've got. Here's the rough, like, setup of my character. What should I even be doing moment to moment to make me effective? And he basically gave me an incredibly brief rundown, like, look, just go wimpy, don't die, don't eat bash, spam some quick bolts. Even that, now I'm in a fight and I have a plan. I don't know what anyone else is doing. I don't know what's going on. I'm not reacting intelligently to other players, but I know I can keep hitting the button to start fighting. And right from that is the step between you basically being a mobile to now you are in the fight. Having that heuristic, having that basic idea of, hey, when the fight starts, go ag and start smacking stuff. Now you're in a fight and you're not just you might still be losing, but you're not doing so in a panic of spam fling. You actually have an idea of what's happening. Maybe you win, maybe you don't, but now you've made this problem tractable, because now this next step is, all right, I'm doing something. How do I do it better? And each step of the way, now it's, okay, I'm doing something, but I can do something more complex. I can do something that responds to the enemy. I can do something that involves setting up a plan with the area. All much larger steps, moment by moment. But you need that first idea of, when the fight starts, if there's a gun to my head and an orc locks me in a closable, what do I even do to make my character go after that guy? And this is something you can get that in a short conversation with a more experienced player, but without that sort of exposure, you're never it's gonna take you a long time to piece that together. If you're totally new and you've only been hitting mobs that honestly don't even fight back, you're not gonna understand, hey, hit them, and after each hit, flee and wait for a second. Some incredibly basic heuristic that is gonna take you a huge amount of the way.
This is a very minor point, but you're right. The fact that the normal XP experience does not, there's really, like, hit flee is not a part of it. The fact that, like, hit flee,
quick spells aren't,
and, like, kind of weapon cooldown is not a part of the normal XP. It like feels like that should be something that's, like, relatively straightforward to fix. But yeah, I totally agree. But the thing is, I like that. If you're lucky, I totally agree with everything you said. But it's sort of like you kind of rely on the benevolence, the grace of these captains of the game, Arkadij or whatever. Is there any way the game could incentivize that? Like, how could the game incentivize exactly what you're talking about, which is someone like that taking you kind of under their wing for a second? Because it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. It's like you play for years, you get a random serendipitous moment, you get to play with one of the total pros, and the situation is such that they're sufficiently in control, they can help you, mentor you a bit, tell you what to do, and you're like, wow, I just learned so much. But it's like once every 3 years.
I don't have an immediate answer. I agree that it should be incentivized. Yes, in a perfect world, you would just help people out, but ultimately, and we kind of had this discussion on the main Discord, that it's a systematic problem and we want systematic solution. Why should you pick up someone? And there needs to be a reason. I don't have an answer right off the top of my head, but I think it should be incentivized to group with less experienced players. I don't know how that would be determined, but I think it would only encourage more going on in the game. Because one of the things I really dislike seeing in general is the game gets more and more solo, and that drives development to empowering solo players, which leads to more players playing solo, to the point that why even group? It's slower to XP as a group than charm 4 wargs and just churn through the entire map. What's the point? And the point is, well, this is a multiplayer game. I did not log in to watch the game play itself. I want to group with other players, and if I don't have them, I'm just renting. If the game incentivized more players to get on that, and so new players knew if they log in, someone's going to say, hey, fall in line, let's go have an adventure. That's going to keep things going. It's going to keep things alive, and it's going to get those players involved in the game and caring about it. Yeah, but I don't know. And if you have suggestions on how that might be incentivized in a sort of simple fashion, that would be amazing.
Mine is, and I'll shut up, I'll let the other guys talk, but I'm a broken record on this one, is my proposal is, if you're a leader and a follower in your group, a group mate follower, gets first trophy, or maybe even first 2 or first 5 trophies, you, the leader, should get XP at that trophy level. So if it's your 70th time killing Muranog, but your group mate's first time killing Muranog, you get XP, your XP, however the XP calculation is based on trophy, you get to borrow essentially their trophy, that first kill trophy for you. And that's it. So that's it. Nothing else. It applies everywhere in the game. Maybe you want to do some sanity check, like the follower has to be above a certain level in the mob, or what the kill has to be above a certain level. So like sanity checks like that. But that's something super simple. It's just if you help someone to achieve a first or an early kill on a trophy target, you benefit somehow from that teaching in the form of an XP, a commensurate XP boost.
So
I have led enough orcs to be jokingly called a Darky Istar more than once. I've also mob killed enough orcs to laugh at that name.
Yeah.
Smallest pushback possible. Do we want XP to be the main motivator when not every player cares about XP?
Well, hold on a second. Before we hop into that, Nick, you had something you want to say?
I was going to say, to tack on to what John was saying, I think part of it too is getting the experience of knowing the game mechanics. So like you mentioned, hit flee, when you don't really learn at first that hit flee, essentially every weapon is a gun, basically. It has to reload, it has to recharge. You can't just fire a barrage of bullets. You have to hit someone, you have to flee, you have to wait for it to reload, and then while it's reloading, you have to try to avoid being hit yourself. And that's something that once you learn, it actually does benefit you in being able to do things like solo or 2-man, very difficult things as warrior. But the other thing I was going to say is you were talking about experienced players. It is kind of a disadvantage to PK with someone that isn't as experienced, and so they, a lot of people just don't go out on a limb to do so. And I think part of that is also because it takes it takes communication on the part of the experienced players, but it also takes sort of knowledge on, if you're in a closable and the main buffer is hitting and you are another warrior, you need to bash that person you're fighting so that the caster can block the door. If you're sitting there just hitting assist, or if you're there trying to close the door, then you're not doing your job, and you're not letting the caster do their job. Like, everyone has a job, and I think it's easier for people when they, a group with people that they can anticipate what their actions are going to be. That's kind of why these cliques form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is obviously true, and there's no immediate way to train that in. Even now, I will tell players that I do frequently play with, who are experienced and know everything you've just said. Look, here's going to be the play. I'll go in, I'll hit, I'll start closing, you land the bash, whatever, just so we've got the playbook in mind. Because another problem, actually, this is kind of an aside, but I wanted a pedestal to talk about this, is there's a lot of really experienced players who know everything you say, but assume experience is a substitute for that level of communication of just saying who's going to do what, and as a result, don't actually do anything.
Yeah.
That results in the fact that a lot of times grouping with experienced players won't teach you anything. So, for example, let's talk about that time that you blew up an orc recently, and you'll know he kind of stood there because he was hitting and not so much fleeing. That's okay. Dispels are painful. No one has time to react, but note where the rest of the orcs in that fight were. Not in the room. Mm-hmm. Because experienced players who are used to playing with people they're not familiar with are going to default to, I need to make sure I'm alive, which means I need to aggressively hit flee, which means everyone for themselves. And so almost every fight against Darkies turns into, oh, you thought that was a 3v3? It's a 3v1 3 times in a row against fleeing orcs. So here's the next problem. And actually, it is kind of just what you said, is once players get a sense of how to play the game, without groups and without structure, they're not going to learn how to make their characters efficient in a war context. Because you can be the best hit fleer on Earth, but if the three of you don't know how to stand together, use prot, use parry split, you're not a threat.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to kill a coordinated group.
It's 100% true.
You look at the coordinated groups that do work together, Alistair's pack is not fleeing around randomly. They're all assisting each other, and now you've been hit with 4 smites in the span of a second with parry split.
Yeah, I will say some of the biggest humble pie I've ever eaten in my life is getting destroyed by Zorks, who are like, some of the worst stats in the game, and magically Alistair's walking around making it feel like you're just getting hit by 12 dispels at the same time. You're like, what is happening? But just to hop in here, Kilter was saying in chat, to Mike's point, that TP actually works very similarly to what you're suggesting, in that the leader gets like a chunk of the followers' TP. So there is actually precedent for that.
Yeah, that is true. And I think kind of the point that was being brought up, that there's not a great way to learn those basic mechanics that even I skimmed over, the concept of weapon delay, of hit and flee, and why to hit flee. A lot of that you could probably cover with an automated sort of tutorial zone where, Quor and Fornos says, here's the fighting tutorial, get in here. It covers the basics of, hey, here's what weapon delay means. Here's why you hit flee versus an enemy that can bash you. Mm-hmm. Here's what some of the basics of different spell speeds mean in terms of your mana availability. Mm-hmm. A lot of this could be built into the game, and I think would benefit a lot, because if every new player said, hey, I want to come along, I understand the concept of hit fleeing, of not getting bashed, of rescuing someone who's bashed because that removes the bash impact from them, of doing all these things. Mm-hmm. You're getting people on the ramp to being able to engage in any part of the game they want, and not feeling like, I wanted to smob but I got PK'd, my session is ruined because someone griefed me, but rather I wanted to smob and I got to PK. Mm-hmm. And making that jump, I think, is important. Even if you don't want to do it, the fact that you can means you don't have to be afraid or offended by it happening.
You can easily just make some mobs as well to help teach that stuff, like make wraiths cast way more. And so you can't bash them. The only way to stop them from casting is hitting them. And they cast faster than if you stay. Like if you stay in the room, they're just going to land the bolt. So like you can teach players through mobs and make it the XP experience more similar to the PK experience.
Something that has always seemed strange to me is almost, and you guys, trump me on knowledge here, but almost every single situation in the game where the mob locks you in, where the mob closes and locks you in, it's a one-roomer, right? I can't think of any, right? I mean, everything.
Azra Zyra will pull the lever down and lock you in a 3-roomer.
Mm. Okay, yeah, but this is close.
But you're right.
So
it's a limited set.
Yeah, and so it's like, so it kind of like that to me. That's just such an easy thing. It's like just have mobs lock you in a 2 or 3 room zone. And so that way thieves and warriors can escape or flee, do a little hit flee, go for a stab, or, escape, move, load a crossbow, come back, right? But it's strange that the game, like they write, and the people, so much creativity, they write all this muddle, and it's like, okay, we're just going to lock the player in one room, and that's it. You got to have a buffer, you got to have protector or rescue, and you got to nuke, and that's it. Which is, in reality, is, if you could track, like the vast majority of PK4 play takes place outside of one room. Like once it gets into one room, it's over.
Yeah,
right. That's the terminal situation in PK. But so it's I just feel like if there was a couple of easy situations where a heavy beefy mob locked you in like a 2 or 3 roomer or something, and you could actually start to kind of like organically on your own be like, oh, okay, if I stand there, this guy chews me up, but if I flee, my weapon cools down, I have another chance. Something like mm-hmm. I can play some. You sort of start to like grok in your brain that just standing there and getting pummeled is not the highest utilization of your ability.
Well, to John's point, I think that's absolutely true. That you should be using them for practice, but I think we do need some form of like I don't think that players are necessarily just going to figure that out. You do want some sort of exactly the weapon or the Hooer or Tour, I forget what his name is, in Fornos being like, hey, by the way, exactly, there's a thing called weapon delay, and if you run in and out of a room, like you need someone to explain that so that then they can understand it and then they can try to practice it, on mobs. But just expecting them to figure it out is because yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, most mobs are designed pretty regularly, in the sense that hit fleeing them, okay, each time you hit flee, you take a hit back. There's only so much to be gained by that sort of fancy dancing versus just beating them to death. Yeah, there are obviously examples, multiple mobs in the same room, for instance, but I think a lot of players, when they are XPing especially, just steamroll the content. They're not looking for complex mechanics, and indeed specifically build to not have to engage with said mechanics.
But that goes back to your point, dude. Your original point, which is that a little bit of PK skill dramatically improves the overall gameplay experience. But right now, basically, players kind of self-sort or self-divide themselves into two populations. I run at PK and I just enjoy typing follow and typing assist and getting loot. Which, by the way, I spend a lot of time in that group, so I'm not criticizing it. There's that population, and then there's like, I'm totally gonna eat a bunch of rips and have to requeue a lot to learn some fun shit. But like, I feel the game actually kind of polarizes. It forces those two groups apart. Whereas maybe they're like okay. Here's a question. Here's like a thought experiment. What type of smob design or mob design could the game do that would actually begin teaching people a little bit ways to keep cool? Like you said, when you get jumped or when there's PK, you don't just completely fall apart. Like what could the game do organically? And maybe it is like Huor in Fornos teaches you a little tutorial on weapon delay and stuff like that. When you practice smite, he's like, don't stand in a room when you're wielding a war sword, something like that. But what do you guys think?
Well,
what could the game do to kind of naturally to make it such that PvE playing increases survivability in PK?
Well, here I have one big point that's going to kind of put a cloud over all this, and then I'll talk about some ideas I have there. But the biggest thing is that there's a reason PK death and mob rips don't have the same penalty. When you engage in player killing, someone will die, which means death is kind of a component of the experience, whereas you shouldn't die in PvE, and hence mob rips are a lot more painful. If mobs are able to threaten you in the way that players might, even to a slight degree, that throws that balance a little bit out the window. Because if mobs can seriously jump you, chase you, lock you in places, all of a sudden, nobody likes mob ripping. And nobody likes to mob rip to mobs that seem to be designed to absolutely murder you rather than just stand there.
Hot take, by the way. Hot take. You said that in a PK environment, someone is going to die, and that's the only way that you get anything out of it. Hot take, I think that you should get something out of just fighting, even if no one dies. Like your war points, or maybe not war points, but like battle points. I don't know, something. You should get points just for being in combat and doing damage to the enemy. That way, there's like more incentive to... Because right now, that's a big problem with PK. It's all or nothing. It is all or nothing. Either you kill them, or there's a giant waste of time, you know?
Now, to be fair, seeing that line... blue text that you hit them and the in-cap message coming up, that's what it's all for. That's
oh my god, orgasmic.
That's the last beat of your heart that you feel. That's what, if I just got if people were incentivized to not fight to the end, it'd be even sadder. In fact, I would rather see mechanics, and I've been trying to push these with bears, where you're more empowered to fight to the very last moment, because we want to see those endings. The endings of the battle are what really canonize PK to so many people. If you think about logs that are memorable in Elden Ring, it's those down to the wire finishes, but it's the finish. Without the finish, I don't think, even if there's benefits, even if there are rewards, I don't think it's going to capture the mindset of people in the same fashion.
Well, so I agree. The theory behind that is by incentivizing just beating on each other, people are more likely to go low and then be more vulnerable to death, as opposed to just like, okay, well, I'm a hobbit and I just passed a troll. Fuck it, I'm out. You know.
Who are these hobbits that don't want to fight trolls?
I've never met one, but I've heard they exist.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to answer Mike's question, I think black patrols are a good practice, because you will absolutely get murdered by one if you don't have a plan how to deal with them. And even if you do and something goes wrong, you have to know what you're going to do. So
yeah, that's interesting.
To be honest,
no one
I've
likes
done
black
maybe
patrols.
like 2 black patrols in the last few years, because it's just not worth the time or effort.
Yeah,
and I see them kind of as just a muddle obstacle to walk around rather than something to plan around.
Maybe they just
And part of it's for that reason. If
something.
something goes right, I get 20k XP and no loot. If something goes wrong, people lose levels, and then they get mad at me.
Well,
That's
actually,
fine if there's a couple of you, but if you're like going to Balrog or something, there's just way too many of you to just. I mean, you can try to avoid them, or one person can try to lead them away, but usually it's just easier to know what you're going to deal with them, because if one
there's
person
not a lot
is AFKing or whatever, then then people will die. You know, I usually see people die because they're not paying attention. So.
Well, so this is we're gonna take a slight pivot here in the conversation, and getting into, we touched on risk versus reward, basically, and that's what a big part of PK is, and specifically when you were just talking about Black Patrols, like, yeah, there's no reason to do a Black Patrol because there's not much reward, even though it's very difficult. Right now, we're gonna pivot a little bit into the newbie aspect of the game. Right now, I think there seems to be a huge reward problem in Mume, where it's very difficult, which is great. We all love the difficulty, you know. As a matter of fact, I think we should market more towards that. I think Kilter was saying, like, we shouldn't be marketing the game as like, oh, this is a fun Lord of the Rings game to play. We should be like, no, this is Lord of the Rings Dark Souls, okay? Like, this game will kick your ass.
Yeah.
But
one big objection: Dark Souls doesn't have penalties. That's why it can be hard. You can die 100 times to a boss, you lose nothing. I find that whole series relaxing because there's nothing at stake. I can just goof around.
It's harder than Dark Souls.
That's a good soundbite. We should use that soundbite to advertise.
Dark Souls
After
is easy.
After playing Mume, I find Dark Souls relaxing. Yeah, we gotta put that all over YouTube.
Exactly. But no, to get to the risk versus reward thing here. Right now, the first couple levels are fairly rewarding. You know, you log in, you do Gandalf, which by the way is fantastic. You do some quests, you kill some things, you get up to like level 5, 6, 7, and it's pretty good. Like, you know, you're playing, you're getting stronger, you're feeling like you're having fun, you're beating that stupid wolf that kicked your ass. You know, the problem is from around level 10 to 20, there is very little reward that you get. You get a little bit stronger. You can't fight any players. If you meet someone as a level 15 versus level 5, it's the same outcome. You die immediately. You know, if you, in terms of the fun things you get to do, you don't really get to do any new cool fun. Like, you're not super mobbing. You're not doing anything crazy. You're just killing slightly harder mobs, basically. Like, we have this chunk in the middle where the game is extremely, extremely painful. Nobody likes leveling a cleric level 10 to 15. Nobody. Like, not even pros. We have this chunk in the middle.
Shouldn't exist.
We have this chunk in the middle where I think we lose a lot of players because it's a bitch, but there's no reward, you know? And I'm not saying get rid of the bitch part, but maybe we need to reevaluate how rewarding that experience is, you know?
Well, I'm the wrong person to comment here. I have a support network of players. I don't find it hard to level through that. It takes maybe a day to get to hero or legend.
But without a support network?
Yeah, but it's your crew. It's your boys, right?
Yeah, that's kind of my point. So this is not the kind of conversation where I can add that much into, just because I'm so distanced from that kind of feeling of being the total new player getting into it. I mean, I remember vaguely that it took me, I got to imagine, at least a few months before I had my first hero character in Mume. And for me, that was okay because it did seem like such a massive amount of progression and exploration. The idea of, well, the game will really start once I'm 26 wasn't even a concept that I had. But again, this was a whole different time. And to some degree, you're right. There is kind of that gulf where XP requirements really spike up. There's not that much expansion in what you can kill, especially if you're playing certain types of characters that are particularly caster base.
Well, you need a group. You know, you don't have charm.
You benefit a lot from a group. Yeah, don't have charm. You shouldn't have charm. Makes you a bad person. What I would like to see, though, let's get back into serious things. And I think this is not just for those levels. This does go higher into the legend area. One of my favorite mobs in the game is the Mirkwood Wood Elf. For the following reasons. It's a quest-based kind of thing that any player can get. It will follow you and assist you and bash things. It's useful for XP. You cannot spam order it and make PvP into an ugly mess of just spam hit, spam bash. So it's not crazy in that regard. But it's a way that even if I log on solo as warrior, I can just run in there, bash some mobs, pick the lock, get him, and now I have a session, even when I'm not powered to solo. We have mercenaries, which are kind of useful if you're very low level, or maybe you get a whole bunch of them in parry split. we have this one singular wood elf who exists in Mirkwood, but there's not a lot of mobs like that in the middle, and I kind of wish there were, because I find it more interesting than just a typical charm. And I like that it seems to more involve you in the world. I would love to see more quests that got you assist mobs or support teams. And in a perfect world, we would just have player groups, but we know that's not going to be the case, not immediately. So while I haven't talked about the whole reward concept that you brought up, Peter, but making those levels feel less painful because you have tools to get through them, and those tools aren't just, hey, get the most overpowered broken thing. There's ways you can maybe get a ranger mob to assist you, or there's ways you can find other quest rewards to speed you through it, are going to do a lot to just make that path feel not just easier but more interesting.
Yeah. Another thing I was thinking of is that after 21, you can start getting involved in the war if you're on Puke's side. But one of the really unique things about the dark side, which I find so fun, is like you're in it from the start. You know, from the start, you're scrounging for equipment, and Pukes are in slag, and you know, like you feel like you're in the war from day one, pretty much. And you don't get that vibe at all from Puke. You know, like you really shouldn't touch anything until you're 21, right?
I take that mindset when I'm back to when I'm playing Whitey. Because I know most of the time with the hours I play, if I'm XPing, eventually Zud's going to come after me, and eventually I'm going to try and flee him in debris or do something like that. And that's just the way the world works, and that's what I have accepted. So I agree, you're right, but I think that's a mindset players should have all the time. You're always in the war once you're east of the Brandywine Bridge, and honestly, not even that, because I've jumped people in Grey Havens before. You're always in it, and that's cool because now there's something you can do. And of course, yeah, nobody likes instantly dying to stab or being immediately blown up. But at the same time, are we really going to say that killing black wolves is more interesting than running from an orc?
Of course not. No one logs in is like, I want to play a Lord of the Rings game, and it's like, let's go kill some wolves. Like, no, that's not why they do that. But how do you empower newbie characters to at least have a small impact, something that they can help out with, something that gets them interested in, like, ooh, this is fun. I, did this, or at least I saw this. How do you do that without making it so that they just instantly die?
Yeah, that's a tough one. If you think back to the past, raids were probably the best example because no matter what level you were, you could, hold the line when Bree was getting burned down. You wouldn't do very much, but you were there. And that was interesting. If you're wandering around on the map and just walk into 3 smiters and cease to exist, it's not that exciting. You probably didn't have that much fun.
Yeah.
I don't know how you change that with the low player base counts. And sure, we could talk about let's muddle ways so that players can, I don't know, pay amounts of money or equipment to commission mob raids to try and get that element back into the game. We can talk about coding solutions, and we can talk about player-driven solutions of trying to just change culture, but that's limited, right? And it's idiosyncratic with regards to the mindset of a given player. And I don't have an immediate solution there either. The problem is we want a challenging, punishing game, and what that means is sometimes you're just going to get punished. And ultimately, we like the punishment because it makes victories feel sweeter. We like that everything's at stake because then when you win, you get that rush, that catharsis, that relief of, hey, I pulled it out. What you don't like is putting it all up and then you just die, and then you complain you lost all your gear. I think that's a pretty common trend that actually people hate the fact that Mume is punishing when they're the ones getting punished. But you can't separate those elements.
Well,
you could maybe do more for, the total newbies and people who are on Who Knew, and that should absolutely be a certain thing, because nobody is impressed that a level, 13 player who made his character within the last month dies.
Well, so Nick, you'd be a really good one to answer this question, since you don't necessarily like being in the full combat all the time. What would you find? What would be some interesting ways? / would you find it interesting if there were ways that you could affect the war from a kind of more supportive aspect?
I mean, I guess it really depends. I just I've never really cared for PK for a number of reasons. One of the big reasons I think we talked about a little bit last night was the fact that you just can't socially, you just can't win. Like there's no winning.
Yeah.
Like I'm not talking about like killing the other person and winning in game, but like socially you you just cannot win, no matter what you do. Whether you're always doing something wrong to the other person's point of view. If you fight them, but they think that you're overpowered, they're gonna whine and call you whatever. If you fight them, and or if you try to avoid them, they're gonna call you a wimp and whatever. If you fight them and you're both equal, and that other person has the advantage, but you luck out and win, they're going to be really upset and call you all sorts of things. And finally, if you lose and they win, they're going to sit there and gloat about you and tell you how, oh, this, whatever. It's like people feel like they're entitled. It's like they feel like they're entitled to
Your death.
win, to go up against all odds and have this amazing story that they went up against all odds without actually taking any risk and accepting responsibility of that impending risk if they lose. It's just
And Nick,
I don't like
this
it.
is the exact parallel to the person who says they should be allowed to PvE without consequence, and you're entirely right to bring it up because Mume's got so many of these characters. All PvE games have these type of characters where the innate PvP experience is one that's asymmetrical, is one that's organically derived rather than one that's curated. You see obviously problems, but not as much in like that specific framework in games. StarCraft, it's 1-to-1 head-to-head. It's built for 1-to-1 head-to-head. There's only so much you can complain about, and granted, that's still a lot, but you can't argue that it took two of you to kill me when you are spec'd into a game that's built for 1v1. Mume will unfortunately propagate these mindsets, and it's awful to play when this is kind of your experience. I have had so much that I could talk about in that context where I know that any kill I secure is going to result in a Discord message saying, "Yo, dude, what the fuck? Why'd you kill me?" It's like, well, that's the game. I played the game with you.
Yeah.
Do you not want me to play the game?
What
What's going on here?
What percent of PK rips do not result in some sort of like angry, reproachful, resentful
1%.
Yeah.
Not everyone likes to deal with that, or
They shouldn't have to.
I like to play the game. Well, I don't play it now, but I liked to play the game for the social aspect and for achieving. I mean, on the Richard Bartle's personality test for gamers, which Richard Bartle, if you don't know, created the first MUD, was just called MUD, and he is a professor over there in Yorkshire in the UK, and he has contributed an incredible amount to theory of gaming as part of his work in academia, and he actually made this has written books on it, done a ton of research into the different personality types of gamers using MUD as a test bed. And so under that, I am an achiever type. I like to build up my characters. I like to get all the shiny things. I like to get the high levels. I like to be overpowered, and I don't really like to PK. I like to that it's just not my cup of tea. But I don't. If other people enjoy it, that's I like everyone to enjoy the game for their own reasons. I don't want people to have only one way to enjoy the game.
Well, so I think the wine thing, like the fact that, like you were saying, Nick, that like you're always going to deal with the social fallout. I think that is drastically intensified by the fact that we do all know each other because it's a small player base. Like, I don't think things were as bad. Again, I wasn't much in the PK scene in my beginning years, but when Mume was hopping and there was just kind of death all around you, it felt a lot less personal, at least to me. It was just like, well, we died, like there was just constantly, everyone was dying all the time. So it was less of a, I know there were tons of personal fights happening all the time. But it seems like now it's far worse than it probably normally should be, if that makes sense,
I think to a degree it's also less abstract because maybe you had somebody on MSN or some platform, but the bulk of the time people were just putting things in the little random runes thing on Elven runes. Whereas now you're getting direct Discord messages. People might contact you on Facebook. You've got people are
come
much
to your
more
house,
dialed into the idea.
That would never happen to me. LinkedIn.
That the digital world and the real are connected, and so it feels a lot more personal when somebody comes after you, especially with the small player base, where tomorrow you're probably playing with that person, and you better believe they've still got a grudge, because grudges in this game go back year upon year. What was the term I used? This is a time capsule of personalities where we're all still, in a way, screaming at 15 years old, thinking the web is just like it was in 1995, but it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And the result is that the bulk of community interaction turns into complaining, and it's complaining about playing the game. I've had players, they jump me, I kill them, and they complain. What do you want me to do here?
Yeah. I think that I hate to take it that place. I honestly think that kind of touches upon like a darker, like you kind of get addicted to the game. You invest too much of yourself in it. You're craving the dopamine hit, that little micro validation of a win. And then when you're denied that, it's like so frustrating that you act irrationally. Like, I think that's a darker topic, but I do think it plays a role there where, you log in and there's this subconscious expectation, like, I'm going to get my little hit. I'm going to get my little bump off this. And then it doesn't happen and you just fall apart. That's like the sadder part of things, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
That happens to every
for some
game,
people,
though.
that's, I wanted to smob and someone killed me. How dare he kill me? What the hell? Why is this player like this? So you get upset. And it's tied even more into PvP, where by nature you have to engage with people, and they get to also decide from their side how you engage with them, because of course you're not forced to fight anybody. And that gets right to what Nick was saying, that with a lot of players you can't win, and Mume will foster this mindset. All I've found as a solution is to personally do the most you can to get away with it. Like, make characters that don't require equipment, plan sessions that don't require something to be done. If I don't find someone to hunt, I'm just gonna go smob. I don't care. I've got stuff I can do. If the smob I want to do doesn't load, I will do something else. I don't feel like I have to do something to make my session worthwhile. The more I try and mentally make that what my mindset, the less mad I get about the game, because you can't ruin the session if I didn't have anything to do anyways.
Kilto right now repping the troll race. No equipment needed.
What a guy. If bears could actually have, there are so many concepts on the cutting floor right now. If we could just actually get this implemented so the bears were more fun, that would be another avenue.
Absolutely.
But even beyond that,
for sure.
Maybe this is our segue to talk about combos. But here's a common conversation that I had with Sindane. So you're on blast, other Mike. He'll come up with some stats. Line of stats. Here's my character design. Mike, not you, other Mike.
Yeah. PK Mike. We should call him good at PK Mike.
PK Mike, what is this
Sorry,
just
so
showing
short.
me? And he'll say something like, "Look, with traveling, gleaming staff, a glow stick, and shining chain, this is totally going to be viable." I
know exactly.
It's like, you're going to die once, retire forever because you lost your gear, never play again. Don't make these characters.
Exactly.
Make characters that you can go back into battle with, like some random medals and a sword. All of a sudden, oh, I got looted. Yeah, okay, but I'm ready to go again. Let's do this.
Yeah. No, I know exactly. It's like the people when Heightened Senses lore came out, they were like, "Oh, okay, my character doesn't need track anymore. I'm gonna re-roll and re-practice to get those pracs back." It's like, yeah. No, I now, after 10 years of Hard Knocks, I consider it a critical part of character design and stat design and combo design to be like, what are the minimal EQ dependencies? Like, if your character has to have a gleaming to play, no way. That's a bad design. If your character has to have an ornate steel shafted warhammer to where you can, if you're required to have an ornate to enjoy playing it, no way. Totally failed character design in my
If your character needs legend EQ to work, then it's the legend equipment that's doing the work, not you.
Yeah.
And that's a flaw. Because then, going back to what we said, if someone loots your gleaming, which is a pretty common item to loot,
90%.
They've ruined your session, and now you're upset in the same way you were talking about, Mike, that they've broken your way of playing the game. And I mean, you can see Modern Mume, people go ballistic because they lose their focus. Your character doesn't work without its staff? Please don't make a BN then. People assert that they need certain items to operate their character because they've gotten a little bit entitled to the fact that people won't take their stuff, but also that their session requires it, and hence anyone who interferes with that is now a social enemy. And that's not healthy. It's not a mindset I want new players to have either. I want them to get into the idea that I lost some gear. Well, the more you put yourself out there, the more people will spare you stuff, and ultimately your character doesn't need everything. I do think Mume is overinflated in terms of equipment. Equipment matters
Absolutely.
way too much, not just in the mindset, in a literal
Mume
statistical
has a
way.
huge
There's
inflation
so
problem.
much unknown equipment or little items that can turn the tide of things that I disagree with. But the best thing you can do for your own session is to ensure that you don't need that to make it work.
Yeah.
Yep, totally agree. All my combos in the past 5 years are designed around fine chain, you know, BSB. No, don't have a critical requirement on a gleaming shit like that. If you feel you can't play your character unless you have a bejeweled shield, you failed. Like no, come on,
Yeah.
just play with the guild and play with the Arthedain. Find a way,
Mike and
make it
I,
fun.
we experimented with we've been experimenting for combos with forever, but a couple years ago we were experimenting with like some like ultra low statted guys, like you just absolutely take
Con.
like zero,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, like 9 con or like 7 will or just ultra low, and yeah, the side effect of that was some like really unenjoyable characters to play. Some
Now I have to
Yeah,
speak.
let's do the biggest combo fails segment.
So a while back, I was running out of reasons to play. I had been playing Cube for a while. NA darkies have kind of all been beaten into submission. It was getting a little bit quiet. And I broached this to my group. I have an idea for a character. Just leave the stats at 8. You don't need stats to play this game, man. Stats are for casuals who don't understand what it means to be a man. And so we made a group of just all 8 stats and just roamed around.
That's
It went
hilarious.
great. Mike mob killed me by closing me in with a snake. It turns out snakes are very dangerous when you have 10% skills. But in general, like,
what was the max level you guys got to?
oh, we got bored at like 6 or 7. I was saying you
Honestly, I'm
get
impressed
down,
that you got to
get
7.
21 with me. You get crossbows. We are killing Zud, and we're gonna make sure he knows about it. But we got bored of that, and we all kind of stopped playing for a while. But on the idea of bad stats, I think in the same way I just talked about equipment, and we kind of came to an agreement. Making characters that are sub-optimized is more fun. The moment you make a character that has to be optimized, is pushing the percentages the highest they go. Now you need to make your character do the best it can, and all of a sudden you're going to care more about winning and losing.
Absolutely.
I made like a Hobbit War Mage, which is the worst thing you can do, and just ran him around in PK. If I lose, oh, it was the character's fault. I'm not mad. I don't care.
Never had more
It's a
fun.
grand old time.
I've never had more fun on any character than Slayah. Slayah is my favorite character, and he is trash at everything. But it's the feeling that exactly you don't have to optimize for anything. That's what makes it just a blast, because you're like, well, you feel like you're like holding the wings of a plane on while you're in midair. Like it takes the level and it just turns it up to 11. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I just sent you that log of me with 11 con just yodeling around as a smiter with Quake. Why 11 con? Because I don't need to make the same generic character that everyone's already made. Honestly, Mume doesn't have that much variety. Every dwarf warrior, every elf mage, every half elven cleric, they're all the same. And at the same time, we have all this debate, now changing topics a little, about things like rerolls, respecs, and the like, when stat for stat, I don't think it's as important as people want to emphasize.
Absolutely.
When your focus should be more about just having fun with your character, and that 1 or 2 percentage points is not going to make or break it.
There are a couple skills and spells out there where it does matter, but for 90% of them, it doesn't.
Yeah. Pass-fail skills, which I don't ever crack on my combos, so what do I care?
It's nothing worse than being like, yeah, I've got 90% backstab, and it just doesn't work.
Doesn't Jaegern, player Brooks, have 90 something in Scout, and he was level, I don't know, 80 or something? I guess.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that you mean his elf thief mage combo?
Yeah, exactly.
Where, like #1 warlord with like 92% stab. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I think I just kind of mentally dismiss those guys as playing the same game as me. Like I don't judge my characters based on whatever crazy and arcane magics they have.
Arcane magics.
I think you can learn a lot about the game by making something that shouldn't work and then try and make it work. Because you'll learn what the limits are. And then when you go back to a character that's even remotely sane, it'll stun you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How much?
No, for sure. That's really, I mean, that's what I enjoy most about combos is you delve in the depth. Because, like, there's the various curves, the various, like, skill, both at, like, at the skill percentages, but also kind of the macro, like, class versus class, warrior versus mage, is all these curves. There are like subtle inflection points on there, right? Like I've been working on a Hobbit War Cleric for like a year, tried several stats, and I finally unlocked it. Like will 16 is it. If you will, the difference in blind efficacy on a war mage between 15 will and 16 will, night and day. Like it goes from unreliable, you cannot practically use it, it's a Hail Mary hit or miss at 15, to like at will 16, you can roll around like normal and like smob with your group and XP, and no one's even going to notice the fact that you have bash.
This is so weird to me because I cannot physically. Oh, I guess I can get 16 will on orc, but I never would. So when you're an orc shaman, you don't have to worry about what your int is. It's going to be 15. That's all you get. So
right. Yeah.
Shaman is very liberating.
It's like a Japanese calligraphy minimalism type stat thing. You're like, okay, that's it. I can only do these exact stats. Yeah.
I made a joke that to counter all this build focus, I should just make a character where all the stats are even, all 14s and 15s. Then I looked at that and thought, wait, these are actually objectively better than Shaukr's.
Yeah.
Because all of his stats
what con does Shaukr have?
14.
14? Okay.
So I actually have made a man combo that essentially did that philosophy. It just everything was 14 or 15 the entire way across, and an immensely enjoyable character to play for the most part, just because you're not terrible at anything. You know what I'm saying? Like at any point you can just be like, yeah, I'll throw this on there, and it's fine. And more specifically, you're great at all ranger skills, and ranger skills are the key to making the game feel good. You know, like if you can move around properly, you can track, you don't get hungry all the time, you're not getting thrown off your horse. Like that is a massive like sub layer of like, wow, it just feels better. You know, like if you fail if your armor spell is not that good, like okay, whatever. But
there's a certain player I play with who always tells me, just decay ranger, you always prac too much ranger. And I will remind this unnamed person about the time we trapped Arvidui's group in Gloom, and he drowned on the way in because he didn't prac enough.
Exactly, stuff like that. Drowning, failing climbs, getting thrown off your horse,
like drowning, all this stuff.
Those just make you feel like a shit character. You know what I'm saying? But once you're good at that, it doesn't matter how shit you are to all the other stuff, you feel amazing.
Plus, people don't appreciate how much insane mobility is out there. If you've got high dex and you get ride to like 110 or above or 120 above, you are just unbounded. You are unlimited. Mm-hmm. Like I went, my BN Thief build recently that I was playing around with this year. I think he's got like 121% ride, something like that.
Jesus.
I mean, he can just go is nothing. Like you'd never like, oh, moves, right. I mean, yeah, you get off on foot and you're in like a mountain zone, you got to think about it. But when he's just cruising, rolling around, like no. And so there really are, like, if you get out of the 100 pounds of equipment type EQ obsession thing, there's actually quite a lot of flexibility of what you can do with with a lot of the classic kind of challenges, like mobility and shit. But people are obsessed about int will or int whiz or stir, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about mobility for a second, because mobility is right now probably one of the most forgiving elements of the game that probably wasn't always the case.
Absolutely.
When if I'm making a white side character, I don't even care what his mobility is. Traveling is going to be up. I will physically never run out of moves. I don't even know if it's possible to do so. And the result of this is a little bit more EQ dependence, because you've made characters that rely on this to give you mobility, because you've got, of course, your cloak, you've got the belt, you've got your lures, be it traveling, be it flasks, be it traveling and flasks, be it Bob, which now adds to regen, which, sure, it's not all at once, but it means you don't run out in the first place. And the result, of course, is, on top of all that now we have a situation where people can't die in the open, because nothing can stop you walking home, wherever you think home is.
Random side tangent, walking, super underrated. That I prefer walking over traveling half the time, just because
I hate that damn quest. I hate that goddamn quest so much. The quest
sucks, but like you will always have the ingredients. You'll always have the ingredients. It's not like, oh, hey, do you have roots? Like, no, you have free. I forget what are the stats on this.
Hold on. To John's point, the mobility over the past mobility now compared to the 90s, 20 plus years ago, it's completely different. Before before Mapper and before the modern, like before the modern American prosperity of resources in the game, like you got lost, you got moveless, you got confused, you'd flee north of the road, you'd be in brush, you'd flee north through the one way into the brush, you would not have your map, you'd panic, right? Like a lot, like quite a lot of risk and PK was caught up in mobility. Whereas, yeah, exactly. Now everyone has a map. Now everyone is familiar with all the safe spots, and now everyone has crazy, kind of resource derived or EQ derived mobility. Yeah, I totally like the mobility is one of kind of like the hidden variables that's makes it a completely different game. Compare, I mean, like back in the '90s, you'd log in, you'd get lost, you'd spend your whole session trying to get back to town, and then you'd rent. Like that'd be it. Like your entire session was just a desperate return home or whatever. But I don't know. I think Elistier's big on this. He's always talking about oh the mobility's too much, kills the game, kills the reality of the fight. My take is I rather than nerfing mobility, my take is I think there should be skills or muddle or mechanics that help you impair someone's mobility, like a poison that more aggressively limits them, or like a more usage of black breath, or various skills and things like that that help you snare or trap or hinder someone, rather than just like nerfing it across the board, because I think that would impact a lot of just
Consider the
fun play.
following.
But
Consider the following. We're now going back to the very first topic, the darky experience.
Bringing
You
it
want to
back.
chase somebody, bringing it back. We want to chase someone, want to run them down. There is not a single point in this positional point in this game where you cannot make it to a no-kill safe spot on whatever your full tank of moves is. So first and foremost, running people down to high mobility. And I'm just doing this to just kind of set the stage for what we continue to talk about. The PK experience is now colored by the fact that no longer are you, poisoning someone near Bree and is running them down. You are now chasing people who can and will, from Eamon, run all the way to Rivendell, run all the way to Bree, nonstop. If you do catch these players, because of the level rescaling and the fact that everyone's got more levels, they're all essentially a low end in terms of their firepower, equipment, and defenses. And even if you do kill them, you're going to get complained about. So the actual experience has become rather dire. See how much complaining Zud gets just for trying to chase people around as a solo warrior. Mm-hmm. So okay, you have tools. You can poison them. Bottle immediately counters it. That's not even a thing. I don't even consider it to be a tool half the time. There's Black Breath, which is only going to land if they're bashed or otherwise confused. But more importantly, if I say I'm hitting someone,
I like the way you phrased that, by the way, or otherwise confused. Keep going.
Sometimes it happens. Say I see someone going west from Slag. Should I chase them as an orc? Because once I see they're on the road going west, I will physically never catch them because they can spam nonstop to any other place in the map. So just having counters that you have to inflict on people relies on you being able to actually touch them. And the problem is with infinite mobility, that's not always in the cards. Once someone's away one tick, they're gone. There's no answer to this. They don't have to stop at a safe spot that's raidable, like Caravan, which is an amazing place for fights. They don't have to pause and go off the road to regen unless they've been particularly slack with their resources and are already low. And the result is that most of your session is going to be spent narrating, oh, he's in Bree one tick, after you chased him nonstop, quaffing 10 flasks and getting a bob from somewhere in Anduin.
So how do you limit those someone's mobility without, because once you start taking away mobility, for most of the session, that translates as not fun, because it's not fun not being able to move around if you already know what you're doing. So how do you make that? How do you limit someone's mobility at the same time, not make it feel like, well, now this sucks,
First, who you should bring on to talk more about this, by the way, before we even go anywhere, someone who plays Zaugr a lot. Because Zaugr have to pause to regen a little bit more frequently, and they have to do it intelligently. Mm-hmm. So then to go back more into this, I'm thinking to kind of back in the ye old day of yore when mobility was lower, levels were smaller, because level 25 is like 50 of the old days now. And back in that day, I didn't even have a level 50. Now it's something you can do in a day. So consider that time, and you're making your way to Rivendell, you're probably going to need access to a lot of bobs or other tools. You might have to stop at Caravan. You have to pause in the way. And the kind of dread and threat of that is something that I feel when I think about Mume. The idea that you're at risk. To some degree, that is fun. But at the same time, you're right that if players are used to being able to circumnavigate Arda with no stops whatsoever, forcing them to regen will make them upset. Now, on that point, if you gave everyone a whiz kill lightsaber and they got used to one-shotting every mob in the game, if you took it away, they would also be upset. So just because people are mad does not mean they shouldn't be mad, or you should take that as an argument. But you're also right that regen downtime is not enjoyable during most of the session. I don't know what the immediate solution is, but if the map keeps getting bigger and mobility raises to match it, you just can't kill people outdoors. You have to jump them, but the map's too big for you to be able to cover every jumpable spot. So what are you going to do? Just trap all day? Yes, I will. But your options are limited otherwise, and that's the problem. The players like Nazgûl with Itset showing off what Black Breath and Poison could do in concert to hinder people who didn't know what was happening to them was really exciting, really cool to see. But it's also something that works because they don't expect it. If I play Puke, I just make a bottle at the start of the session. If he starts playing with Black Breath, I just walk away and let him slow track me for a while. The problem is he physically can't stop me walking away, and no one ever can in this game. And I don't know what the solution is, but it has to adjust, because otherwise, if you're playing Darky and you're trying to run down targets, the only people you will catch are complete newbies. And that's not good for newbies. It's not good for everyone else. It's not good for anything.
Agreed. Also, just a side note, Coronos says hi, daddies, in the chat. So hi, Coronos. So or Coronos, whatever his, however you pronounce that. But that was very important that we had to bring it up. But no. So have you guys ever heard of Sid Meier?
Yes.
He built the Civilization games, very very famous game designer. His philosophy on games is basically games are a series of choices for the player to make. And one of the problems with having infinite mobility is there's no choice to make. You just go somewhere. There's no, because like you were saying with regards to Zogs, you have to make choices, interesting choices on how do I spend these move points, that's not a choice that you have to make anymore, which although feels better, at the same time genuinely makes the game a little less fun.
It can. I think there are scenarios where having to plan out what you do, as I mentioned, creates tension that is fun in its own right. But there's also times when this is just downtime from traversing from A to B. So the question is, how do we make that traversal more exciting? Nowadays, the path to Rivendell is not terribly interesting. I'm not enthralled by it. I'm maybe more enthralled by figuring out how to get my group mates through Eamon to kill the chieftains, because I need to care more about their moves, and there is more of a risk of them dying.
You could make you could combine, or you could the panic flag and the no void flag could kind of create some adrenalized type type status effect, which somehow maybe impacts mobility. I don't know, something like
panic might, because I believe panic works by kind of working against your level to some degree. It's part of why when you see really awful to awful fights, you see a lot of little hits that don't quite finish people because everyone's OB and warrior levels are shot to hell.
Interesting.
I didn't know that.
And everyone's super ineffective because panic kind of keeps stacking up to a certain degree, and so everyone.
Really? Oh, so you're saying panic is like it's a scalar? There's a level to it, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of fun logs where you see people take an awful to awful hit, barely make it through, and I'm pretty sure that has to do largely with panic and wounds just cutting people's combat effectively. I don't have the math behind it, so could be completely wrong, but I do know that panic isn't just like one and done. There are scales of it.
Wow.
The problem there, of course, is what happens about you track some guy for 5 minutes and then you see him just zoom past you, and you're like, well, he's gone. He doesn't have panic either. And
it has to be. You have to accept some trade-offs, but I think it would be interesting because that's somewhat like from the books. Aragorn fights some orcs, and then he's drained and exhausted, or something like that. Like
the travel to Rivendell required multiple stops, and those stops continually resulted in encounters. Stopping at Weathertop was an encounter. Stopping around, going past BBT is where they met with Glorfindel and so on, or Arwen if you're focusing on the movie. This is where action happens, because spamming along the road is kind of that's the cutscene of the game. Nothing's going on. When you have to stop at Caravan, that creates the avenue for something to happen. That's where someone can find you, be it an ally, you bump into an allied player, you get charged. Things can actually happen, but so long as the bulk of time in the game is spent spamming on the road, Yeah, being forced to regen and stop is less interesting, but just spamming left and right makes the whole world less interesting because
Yeah.
nothing
So
happens except that
that would
melee and move.
suggest to me something like delayed actions. Like maybe crossing forward is a delayed action or something. Right? Like, you begin to, your horse begins to pick its way through the submerged rocks or something, and that takes, enough time for you to come get hit or something. I don't know.
Yeah, potentially more delayed actions, delayed doors, sort of inherent bottlenecks that mean it's being guarded, so you have to do something else to navigate or ditch your horse. Those could all be something of interest. And here's the other problem: we have zones like that. Eamon is full of them. People just
Yeah.
don't go there because they're
Yeah,
scared
no one
because
goes there.
they realize they might get killed. And I love
Right.
that zone. I had some good fights in there that have resulted in some kills and resulted in being completely slaughtered. But it's actually dangerous because it's almost all on foot. There are so many webs, muddled, delayed doors that just vanish and you're stuck in there temporarily. But the result is that people are going to do the risk assessment and say, you know what? I'd rather go somewhere safe like Moria, and they're just going to be there. And
I
it's
love that
sad that we have
Moria
to
is
say that,
safe.
but Moria is safe these days.
Uh-huh.
You can the only thing you can't solo is Balrog, and even then, I feel agnostic about that because someday it's going to get done again.
Oh, it's done. Yeah, I was gonna say again. Yeah, it's been done. It's just
Has
they.
it been soloed since Luke did it and Charm was
I
changed?
was referencing when Luke did it. Yeah, I was
Oh, okay.
referencing
Yeah,
when.
I meant.
Yeah.
Speaking of Moria and what's something we talked about, how do you pronounce the Dark Claw? Not the word the Dark Claw.
Hishclack?
Hishclack.
I say
Yeah.
Hishclack.
Holy shit, that's like an actual word. I'm impressed.
Oh,
What is it?
yeah, no,
I don't know how to stop typing him. I just keep hitting the HSK keys until people realize what I'm talking about.
yeah, I just face roll on the keyboard usually.
My screen reader says schlock, whatever that.
Schlock. There
That
you
sounds
go.
vaguely dirty.
I have no idea where it gets that from.
Hey, can you go get a schlock real quick?
The dark.
No, Corona does bring a good point. Bree was rated by Nazgul in the books, and it's not. It doesn't feel like there was a lot of safe places in the books, where it was like, well, you're just untouchable now. Even in the Shire, you were fairly touchable. So,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
safe
Caravan,
spot.
again, to bring up, is an amazing place because Caravan is safe, but it's not safe. And it's not safe in a specific way that you hide behind sturdy door, someone else can block archway and pine door and
Mm-hmm.
trap you in. But at the same time, it's close enough to places that it's great for countercharging.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates encounters. I love it when I get charged or when I find someone in Caravan because it almost always turns into action in an interesting fashion. And so limited safe points on areas where it may be conceivable that people need to regen are aggregators of interest, of interesting things in ways that just wandering on the road are not. What Mume really does lack versus a lot of PvPv games, I think, are those kind of aggregation events
Yeah.
where
Convergence. Yeah.
in the old days, like Blood White was scary to do, and it wasn't scary because Blood White was a scary mob or because you might die to the beast at the door. It was scary because people are going to be tracking. It is likely that you might get charged here. That made that area grim and threatening, and the reward was best in slot defensive tools that made it worth it. But now the map's so big, there's no flag that goes up when someone enters a trappable smob that creates scenarios like that creates incredible, memorable fights, or create logs like Dagger's patrol near Dark Tower is Sardakar's charging Blood White log.
Mm-hmm.
Those don't happen, and Mume lacks in most games that I've played of this type. When big events are happening, there's a big flag or a notification. Everyone knows something's going down,
Mm-hmm.
and the reward encourages people to come in, but also the reward is the other people trying to do it. Mume lacks for that. So you have focal points. You have things like, okay, always track Ford, always track Caravan, always track at SSC, check Old White whenever you're passing it in case somebody's in it. But these are very intermittent, very spread out, and you need.
Yeah, you know what?
You hear the Dark Tower being attacked, but that's only one thing. You hear the drums and slag, but that's very localized. These should be expanded dramatically, such that you're on and oh my goodness, players are doing X, and maybe I can do something.
I think what I'm thinking, like way and slide and the way slide exit and I mean that should just be delayed. Trivial thing. Just make it you begin you tediously begin to clear the rocks from the road or something. That could be a delay. And there's
auto
wards
closes
there.
behind you or something.
Yeah. Like no sooner than your mount is through, then the rocks fall down or whatever. That
I
and
was
then
kind
maybe
of
like
sorry, no,
simple
finish what
stuff
you're
like
saying.
that. Simple stuff like that. Or slag bend. Maybe slag bend could be a delayed transition where it's like your mount picks its way through the narrow crevasse and just a delayed. Like there are, I guess, a lot of really simple little constrictions could be enhanced like that without really,
See, I love the.
Yeah.
I was a little saddened when I think it was, I don't remember, was it there from the start when the one way out of Dol Guldur, just south of barricades? Because if you don't have that, then you either have to pick your way through forest, which has delayed exits and climbs, so you'll lose your mount. You have to open barricade, which isn't going to happen for white side players, or you can go through the revealable exit, or you can just loop around the forest. But now that there's, and I say now, I don't remember if it was there from the start. It's been a
No,
while.
it was.
No, it
They
wasn't.
added it. Yeah, they added it.
It was
The one
added
way out of
after
there
like
means
a
that
month,
suddenly
month
white
later.
side players in that area are completely safe. That doesn't
Yep.
need to be there. There's almost like this design undercurrent to make zones that are complex, interesting, and engaging in fights. But then the recognition, like, wait, if we make it dangerous, people won't go there. Okay, give the people a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
And then as a
And
result,
no
people go
narrates,
there.
which I don't understand why it's all no narrates. So you don't even know if like some
even
crazy
harder to
shit's
flag
going
then.
on. You don't even know. But yeah,
Yeah.
when I back in the '90s when I joined and I was cluelessly bouncing around Harland, just like the narrates and just seeing or just having some idea that there was epic action taking place somewhere. That was such an enrichment to the game. Because I mean, back when there's 90 players going on, the narrates are just like spamming past. And big fights and like, oh, something something Rivendell, something something troll. And just like that was such a it was such a it created like it just heightened this drama of like, wow, there's big goings on, big happenings in this game. And now narrate are quiet or there's like some lunatic telling his um you know some obscure story or something, but it's not like just the epicness, the epic kind of hero tales are missing. And I'm always sad, like I don't understand why DG like why is
I think
DG entirely no narrate?
yeah, entirely is the word I was waiting for because I'm pretty sure DG is meant to be a super dungeon in the fashion of Moria, which is also kind of secluded in that regards. But the encampment outside, I don't know what the logic necessarily is.
Yeah, or just the
Lurking
road. Just
Forest
have the
also
road
makes
be,
sense,
have the
but
road be narratable. Yeah, like
yeah, that's true.
something
I think
simple.
you're
Yeah,
supposed to feel isolated, just as you said, just like Moria. Also I think isn't Emon no narrate
Immin's
once
no
you get
narrate.
in.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, once you get in there, so it's like you're supposed to be kind of isolated. You can't narrate for help. I mean, I guess you could always send someone to tell, be like, narrate for help, please. I don't know, but I think that's part of the reasoning. Although with a small player base, I'm not sure how good of an idea that is nowadays.
Yeah. Also, a huge distinction between Moria or DG and Emin is because Emin's supposed to be a super dungeony type thing as well, to a certain extent.
Right,
with
and
all
that will
those
continue to be
fortress.
expanded in
Is
theory.
there's the reward are crap in Emin.
Yeah, there's no reason.
Like Moria, you've got shining galore. That is everyone's about Moria, and DG has some nice stuff too, but it's a little bit more interesting and fun. But it's got some. But like, why the hell would you go to Emin?
I can tell you the reason why this is the case. In fact, the straightforward reason is, unfortunately, there's no real reason why the orcs in Mirkwood or the spiders would have incredible legend gear, lore wise.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in this scenario where you have essentially this forest that's corrupted and was written to the Hobbit as the next obstacle on the quest, but doesn't link to the idea that you can put great loot there because
I don't buy that.
Sure, this was the idea. Well, this was proposed. There were ideas like let's put more shaman stuff in there. Let's put some interesting new stuff, and it was essentially vetoed. Why would you give best in slot magical equipment to the incredibly just like garbled or Durbukai or whatnot?
Yeah, but you could be you could have some very specialized, just like messed up spider fang shenanigans and these weird shaman rags which just do these horrible things, and they do a lot of damage to yourself, but they also fuck up the people around them. Like there's a lot of really cool shit you can put in these kind of like voodoo areas. Yeah, you're not gonna put shining over there, but you can put some really interesting new stuff.
There were attempts and they didn't go anywhere. That's all I can really say about it. I think you maybe could have done more, but I wasn't part of the builders on this.
no offense to the orcs as a race, but they're not known for creating nice things. However, they are known for looting nice things in the books. You could have the scenario where you have, you know, powerful travelers that have been traveling through the area and they got killed by the orcs and the.
Yeah, I mean, you're not
orcs
that
were
far
"Who's
from
fighting?"
Lake Town. You're not that far from
Yeah,
Lake Town.
and
Yeah, there's a couple zones in between that I think are mostly like built as test zones, but it's all slated for post DG at best, and we all know what that means. It means hold on for 2040. You're right. More could be done because as it stands, why would you ever go into Eamon? Black wristbands may be the only reason, and you can just spam do Giggle until you get lucky.
Yeah.
there's three things, well, four things actually, if you count the. I mean, it's not an MN, but if you count the healing lore, but you have.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't counting that as Eamon because it.
Yeah, it's not an Eamon. It's just outside. But the Fellhide belt, the black wristband, and for people that portal or locate, the locate gem. Those are like the only three reasons I would bother going there unless I need the XP.
Yeah, actually,
I
hot
will
take.
try to draw the distinction since Eamon strictly does mean mountains under shadow. All three of those things can be gotten outside of the mountain zone, which is where it starts getting really treacherous for mobility.
Hot take.
Yeah, those
alert.
are all things you can do in Mirkwood, but you can then bounce right. They're all on the road. Is the thing. You don't have to, lose your mount, go through the hidden doors, and so on and so forth.
What's a hot take?
Locate gem?
I got a hot take. Are you guys ready for this?
Yes.
If you're doing Scarred Fell Beast for the belt, if you've got someone that's got 19 strength or above, they should be able to hack through the vines or whatever, the bushes or whatever, instantly. So 19 strength, it's not delayed.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, that makes
Damn,
sense.
easy, so easy, right. You have to have if you're trying to solo it or whatever with a bunch of shitty combos. No, you have to have a 19 strength character, maybe even 20. Make it 20, right? And if you are hacking, what is it? Is it vines? Is it bushes? I can't remember. Hack bush. Yeah, it's instant, no delayed. So make it. It makes no sense that a big, beefy, strong warrior takes just as long as
Wait, has the delay in hacking caused anything? I've never noticed it to be anything beyond just
annoying
flavor to the area.
No, it's just slow. It's just slow and annoying. It just slows you down.
Oh, okay.
It is
the only thing I dislike about Scarred Fell Beast, and I dislike it because it's one of my 4 or 5 legend mob rips since I came back to the game 2 years ago, is that dirty random room with a bunch of trees and roots where if the muddle says today you don't break out, you just die.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not in agreement with removing mob death because if the solution to this is simply do not die, this is usually not a problem. But when mobs are unpredictable in such a fashion and it relies on RNG or whether you die or not, then my mind starts changing.
It is scoutable though. That room is scoutable. Those rooms are scoutable.
Yeah, it was when I was learning the zone on a scout and just kind of walked into it and have not made that mistake since.
There is one room that it's not scoutable.
Yeah,
that's
that first room, right?
enter through the one way. So
you're right.
I
You're
would
right.
always-
The one way. The first room is
Yeah.
Just gotta
I'd always
pray.
tell my group, like, let's pause. Let's make sure that we're ready for this. If we encounter them, don't panic. Kill the roots. Then we can flee. And if it is possible, I think, for that zone to repop on you. So I'm like, every time I enter, I'm always very careful. Always give people a heads up.
They should just. Why does it take so much goddamn time to do that mob? It's ridiculous. There should be some honor system thing where it's like
if you clear all the hoary trees and so on, so and the shadow serpents first, or sometimes you just blitz it and kill it with call. I've done it with just blinding it for a scout once. And, I don't know.
You can call
it. Fun little spot. Oh yeah,
it's open. It's open.
That's how it gets soloed.
I didn't realize that.
Solo it.
Shit.
Yeah.
I thought. I'm sure me and one other person in this group, I can't remember who, like 2-manned it at one point using call.
Yeah, it's 2-manable.
I have 2-manned it on orc with 1 scout, 1 shaman. The scout just stabs it. You buff for the blind it, and stab it. It regens fast, but you can do it in 1 round if you get lucky.
Oh shit! I didn't know that. Well, all right. So we're going a little bit long here, but that's fine because the conversation was pretty good. But we should probably start wrapping up here. So before we do, we're gonna do a hot take round from everyone real quick. So something controversial.
I love how last week my hot take was like let beings buy war horses, and your guys' hot take was like redo the class in Praxis.
Yeah,
we'll keep it small. We're gonna keep it on the war horse level.
Go big.
We're keeping it on the war horse level.
To each his own hot take.
But Mike, you got to lead it off.
My hot take is the Dunland Orc Caves, aka the Uragash Caves. Beautiful zone, clearly a lot of love went into that, but no one ever goes in there. I think those caves should have the flag where that zone does not repop while players are in. So you can clear it. There's no risk of repop. The door is not going to lock behind you. The patrols are not going to pop behind you. And so that way it's a tough dungeon, but you clear it and you have kind of that safety, that that kind of like predictive, or it's not like an RNG thing like John is saying here, like you just clear it. I think that is a simple change to make that will greatly increase players doing that. Get a crossbow, get that wound paste. I think that would be that's like hopefully a one-line code change and like bring a whole new zone online basically, because no one goes there now. That's my hot take.
Hot take. All right, I like it. All right, Nick.
Okay, you said contentious. Completely remove mob death for a person's first character below level 21.
Wow, that's a big take right there. That's a big take.
It's not even that bad though. First character, newbies.
Yeah, I support that.
I can see merit to that.
I would probably
reduce
it. I don't know if I'd get rid of it.
Sure,
I would for the
minimize.
first character. Very first character, no mob death before 21. Because that is the very.
That probably would help a lot,
learning.
honestly, and let you like play the game. That's yeah. I think there's room for there's a serious discussion behind that.
Yeah, there's some tuning, there's some nuance, there's some polish to it, but yeah, I co-sign. Hot take co-sign.
All right, John, you're up.
So my standard answer here is going to be remove charm.
Remove
completely.
Ooh,
you have to group if you want to get stuff done, and I do not want to spend 4 hours pushing past your eagles to fight you. But I feel like that's also been said by a lot of people, so I don't know if that's sufficient or sufficiently interesting. But it is one of my ideas. If I wanted to go really on a hot take, when you die, your focus is deleted. I don't want the complaining about.
Whoa, that is a hot take.
Actually,
there you go.
The complaining about this item that you can reproduce with no PvP required, that darkies don't even get access to, is absurd.
I actually like that. It would stop a lot of that social problem before.
It is alive as long as you
change the game.
And if you want the benefit of a focus, you got to stay alive to ride it like a wave.
It would eliminate that.
Be expected.
It would eliminate a lot of that social problem that we were talking about earlier.
No, you know what would happen? You know what would happen is people will just start playing without. They'll just start playing with chanted staff, not focused staff, which I think would be great. Yeah, I think that'd be great for the game. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that hot take a lot better though. The first one was like a microwave, and that's all it was. Like,
I know. I'm man.
I was buying time.
Yeah. There we go. We need some sound effects for the hot take.
Yeah, we need like a horn or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Last hot take here. Give newbie. Well, first of all, take the find a paths spell, make it a skill, and give it to newbies, so they can always find their way back to like Mailton or something. So they're not just like, well, I'm 5 minutes in this game and I'm fucked. I have no clue where I am. I can at least get back to where I'm going. Like a little like, hey, if you go north, southwest, then you'll go to whatever like home base room you have. That's my hot take.
Does anyone apart from me actually use that spell? Because I actually use that spell, but like, does anyone apart from me? I have a very specific reason, and it only requires one practice, so I can spare one prac for that. But I didn't know if anyone actually used it apart from me.
I've tested it.
I use it in semi-abuse strategies, but I think in orient. I think in orienteering skill, like orient. You type orient Mailton, and it's like your brain races back over the terrain. Go north, northeast, east, south, whatever. I think that's a great idea, dude. I think and then maybe a cool aspect would be like after you have to go meet a mob. You have to go meet a mob, an NPC, before you can do it. Mm-hmm. So it's like once you've been to once you've been to the thing, with sheriff or whatever, then you can do orient thing. I like that. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And a range on it, so it's not like, hey, go to Rivendell. It's like,
right. Yeah, you'd have to be. It would be a progressive thing where as you explore more, then your your find the path orienteering capability scale with it.
I went through the
I like that a lot, actually.
I went through the newbie cycle recently just to test out Gandalf, and I was playing on my phone, so I didn't have a map, and so I was like typing, M for our map, and the current map in the game is useless. Like, what it tells you nothing, like, so. I personally, as a very experienced player, had a very difficult time finding my way around to be like, where the hell is this guy that's supposed to start the whole game for me, Anyway. Yeah. All right, cool. That was all 4 hot takes. I think we had some pretty... We went all over the map on those discussions there, and we went a little bit long, but it was going pretty well. Plus,
yeah, shout out. John has set a very high bar for our first guest.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shaukr.
I'm glad to hop on.
For coming on.
We could extend this by another million hours and talk about more. Oh, and thank you. I love not playing that character ever again and getting to do different things with my life.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for coming on. It means a lot to have like some different perspectives on things, on all this stuff, and hopefully we'd like to kind of expand this and do more interviewee type things. Personally, I think the podcast works best when it's just kind of discussion style, but I'd love to get some kind of interviews going as well.
I really like just kind of talking about whatever comes up without having to plan it out too much. But that might be interesting. And there's no lack of, I think, interest around interviews with experienced players. The way Elven Runes has been doing it, you've definitely got people with dramatically more time and experience in game than myself who would likely be willing to go much more in depth into very specific elements of the game if you wanted to bring them in.
Absolutely. We'd love to get like Elistir on and just I feel like my mind would melt with all the amount of knowledge he has, and, like I'm not even but yeah, no, thanks again for coming on. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and that was Mume Talk number 4. So we'll see you guys.
You listed it as 2 on the video.
Next time. Oh wait, Mike, you got an outro for us?
No, I don't.
No outro? Okay, all right. This has been Mume Talk, episode 4. Peace out.
There you go. See you guys.